And the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
My name is Nicola Charles and I'm a proud anti-vaxxer from Victoria, Australia. Now, I've been worried about vaccines for a long time, but it's not just those clear substances in vials that get injected into people's arms that I'm concerned about. It's vaccines being dropped from the sky as aerosols and vaccines that are added to liquids that we can drink. In 2013, the Australian government administered 1,000 cholera vaccines to recipients in a drink. Who is delivering your water every day, and what is the quality of that water? They've already told us that it contains fluoride, a neurotoxin. 3 years ago, I stopped drinking tap water and recently went onto the Zeta Potential program. This adds alkalinity to the blood and also increases your electrolytes. Something is giving people mass cancers around the world, and jumping onto Zeta Potential for me has been one way for me to alleviate my fears. If you want to jump on the knowledge train with regard to water, click on the link below this show.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Australian Radio Show. I think it is episode 92. 8 more sleeps, if you will, 8 more shows, and we will be celebrating the 100. I've even got my mini cricket bat ready, Nicola, if you will, because I want to raise it to the crowd in celebration of an accomplishment like this. Look, it is Friday, the 16th of May, and tell you what, there is some big news happening. We'll reveal that all in a moment. But before I do, let's introduce you to the other half of this show. Nicola Charles, welcome back and happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you all. Gosh, I forgot it was Friday. Yay, it's the weekend. And just thanks for all the messages again. Really appreciate them. Some quite detailed messages. Now you guys are sending links. You're still not sending voice clips. We can literally put you on the radio if you want your say. You can send them anonymously. You can use a voice converter, whatever you need to do. Thank you so much. And also thank you to the very important key people in the freedom movement in Australia who actually called me on the phone last night. It was quite late. I'm sure I was a bit fuzzy. But one of the things that was said to me is you need to understand that your show isn't about you two anymore. It's about other people. And it really resonated with me, Jason. So I'm feeling the weight of that responsibility and happy to carry it.
Yeah, look, it's an interesting point, isn't it? When you realize that something that you get up in the morning and you create something and you have an expectation of what you want to achieve. Now, any work that you do, I mean, we work, you can work as a volunteer, but most of us work to put food on the table. And so in this process of literally building a media business, you have to, jump these hurdles as you go and realize it's quite difficult and the hours that you put in, etc. But when you build something that turns into something else that's morphed into a significant community service, and then you pause and you go, but are we really making a difference? And clearly we are. But of course, success in media is measured by hits, views, likes, shares, comments. And so it means that it's interactive until, of course, you can get to a stage where it's self-funding and no one really cares. Well, we're not at that stage. And independent media is based on, views, likes, shares, comments, etc. That counts as much as anything else, as do donations and sponsors and purchasing things that we sponsor, etc. And it builds and builds and builds and builds. But the other thing, of course, is, but despite all of that, what we are creating here is a chronicle for this moment in history.
Yes.
And therefore, if for nothing else, hopefully people will be able to look back in the future and go, look what these guys did in this particular time with no money, with, shadow banning, with, operating on the smell of an oily rag, and they were able to achieve it. So, yeah, for those reasons alone, apart from all the ones that you just mentioned, yeah, we continue, even if we, have moments of self-doubt and self-loathing and all those things that you do when you are disappointed, that you can't get to where you want to be. I mean, impatience is one of those character traits that we all have, and patience is a virtue, as they say. So we just keep plodding along, but also we're innovating. And come Monday, we'll try something a little bit different with the show, just in the way that we do it and put it together for you. And hopefully that will make it more efficient and a better looking show, etc. And encourage you guys, please like and comment and dislike if you will, if you want to, but interactivity, trigger the algorithm is what we're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
It's crucial.
I think what people don't realize is if you can't afford, and I understand this is a crippling financial time in history, if you can't afford to subscribe, donate, or whatever, I think, a like and a share is kind of a mini donation. It really is, because what you're doing is you're donating to the future of the show by expanding it for us. And that doesn't cost you anything to like and share. I think it's about time we produce some bumper stickers. So we'll do that after we've got the new format of the show, because I think we're actually going to look a bit different. We might sound a bit different, but it's definitely going to have a slightly different feel, a more interesting feel when we change it over. But I think I've run a couple of businesses in my life, and this is, that comment last night made me realize when you create a business, in my mind, it's like giving birth to a child, and you nurse this child and you nurse this business, and then after a while it grows its own legs and it does its own thing. And I think we're reaching that point at our centenary where this has grown its own legs, and we're sort of servicing this child that's grown up and it's going to run off on its own. And we just have to make sure it doesn't get into any trouble. This will probably be the last show that will look like this. So maybe like and share it and get people involved before the new lot comes along on Monday.
Yeah, how about that? Well, I remember when my firstborn, I went to the pharmacy one night to pick up some something to help her with colic, and I walked in there and I looked like a dishevelled old man that hadn't slept in days, even though I was only about 28 or something at the time. And there was this old chap leaning on the counter, and he looked at me and he said, "Mate, when you get rid of the colic, the teething starts." Well, that's a little bit like this show, right? So.
It is true. It's a baby. We did give birth to it. We have the responsibility. We gave birth to it, but it definitely has become something else. And, it's heartbreaking to think that people say, no, I need this every day. So thank you for that. Thanks for letting us know, because, quite often that's kept us going. Now, Jason, before we came to air, you told me a truly shocking piece of news. And this is legitimate news that has just broken in America. Do you want to share it with the viewers?
Yeah, look, we will cover off in more detail in the news bulletin when we get there, but it appears for those that have been waiting for some time for something significant to break and to turn the narrative around, we now may be at the doorstep of what's about to happen. So what we've just discovered in the last few hours is that the former FBI Director James Comey has shared an image on his Instagram made out of shells in sand with the numbers 8647. And people will think, what does that mean? Well, 86 is generally a term for, is assumed to be murder, and 47 is the number of the president, Trump. Murder, Trump. Now, on its own, you might think, well, that's a little bit weird. Well, anyway, Don Trump Jr. has shared it, asking how is it possible that this person could call for the murder of the President of the United States. Now, given that FBI Director Comey worked for the president, and of course he was dismissed by President Trump, you cannot ask for the murder of anyone, let alone your boss, who happens to be the commander in chief. It's since developed further that Kristi Noem at the Department of Homeland Security is investigating, as is Kash Patel at the FBI. It's all over Fox News, and Peter Doocy has come out with some comments as well. Now, astute news followers have also pointed to the fact that Alex Soros has also put out an image in the past suggesting something similar. And Ed Krasenstein, one of these influencers, left-wing influencers on X, has shared his version of the same numbers using pool balls, 8647 written on them. So this is what you would have to call a form of incitement. Comey has come out and sort of said that he just shared it, and it was some sort of he didn't understand what it meant. I'm sorry, James, you were the head of the FBI. You know exactly what it meant, because your people were the ones that pointed out what the symbols meant in Pizzagate, and that's where people worked out what cheese pizza meant and what these particular symbols. So you can't get away with that. So James Comey has virtually admitted that he did it. He didn't say he was hacked, and so that's another interesting point there. So when you consider what's going on, to lay the grounds for everyone, James Comey's daughter, Maureen, is the prosecutor in the Diddy case. Maureen Comey also prosecuted Ghislaine Maxwell, so people would think, well, Ghislaine Maxwell went to jail for a long period of time, and it looks like in Diddy's case, he's in a whole lot of hot water. But is there something else going on here? So is Diddy a CIA asset? Why did he record everything, and why did he hold that over people's heads? Not dissimilar to what we understand what happened in the Epstein case, and not dissimilar to what happened in the Hugh Hefner case. Now, Hugh Hefner never really had a case to answer, but those that knew about the tunnels under the Playboy Mansion, those that knew about the secret cameras built into beds and rooms in the Playboy Mansion, would be very well aware of what is going on. So this is extraordinary. Now, if we backtrack on this, we were told some time ago by some higher ups in the Trump administration, and I asked Jim Hoft when I interviewed him on the 51st State. He's the gateway pundit, one half of who created that newspaper in the US that gets millions of clicks a day. He said that expect that the first arrests will be over Russiagate. And Russiagate, of course, is Operation, what is it, Hurricane? It's just, anyway, I've forgotten for just the moment. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But the point being that if the first arrests are involved in James Comey's investigation into President Trump using false evidence to spy on a sitting president, I feel that what's happening right now is that James Comey has received intel from within the FBI that he is going to be the first man in handcuffs, and he's acting out. And I think that's what's going on here. James Comey is a very weak man, despite being 6'7" and having all the power in the world. He behaves childlike often with some of his comments and things that he's done in the past. And it's interesting that he released a book in 2018, 2 years after letting Hillary Clinton off the hook by bending the statute. In other words, for what Hillary did in terms of that server, she was meant to be indicted, or the charges were meant to go to the DOJ. What James Comey did at the time was said that there was no intent. Well, the statute did not require intent. He made that up to let her off. James Comey then released a book 2 years later called A Higher Loyalty. So who was he loyal to? The deep state or somebody else? And James Comey has been the nemesis of Donald Trump. So to make it even more interesting, Dan Bongino, the now deputy director of the FBI, has shared a post today with a picture of Phil Collins from the film clip of the song In the Air Tonight. And anyone who knows the words to that song, there's something happening. I feel it in the air tonight.
Something coming in the air tonight. Yeah, it's interesting.
Coming.
Now, listen, Comey is a very bitter man. He was fired by Trump, and he was fired for a reason. I lived in America for 7 years. It's even in movies. You can't claim you don't know what that means. If someone says they're going to 86 someone, it means they're going to get rid of them. It's what they call in America a dog whistle. Yes. It's a dog whistle to anyone who wants to hear. And you have to use Occam's razor in this instance. You know, you can't plead ignorance. You can't have been that high up in the intelligence community and not know what that means. And he didn't even have the smarts to try and attempt to say he was hacked. So this is really dangerous. This is a really dangerous situation. For me, it says that they know we're at the tipping point, which a lot of pundits have been saying for a long time, that this is all about to come out. This is definitely related to the Diddy case. And some important people, probably the likes of Hillary Clinton, are going to be exposed. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be arrested. I'm not saying they're going to, do the perp walk and all the things we want them to do. But these are the soldiers that are trying to protect them. That's who James Comey is. And you know that they've reached the point of desperation when he writes with shells in the sand, and I don't believe for a moment he happened to walk along and find them. The number's 8645, saying 8645. We all know what that means. You know what that means if you've been a fan of Hollywood movies. So I think it's pretty terrifying. And considering his daughter is involved in the Diddy case, that means he's received intel from his daughter that they are stuffed, that they are not going to be able to protect these people, that it is all going to come out. Because this is the thing, there is no honor among thieves. And all of these people that have spoken out that are probably now being protected, girlfriends, victims, you're not going to be able to control, like a puppeteer, all of those pieces. You can control a number of those pieces. And when they realize they can't control the pieces anymore, they resort to violence. That's why Jeffrey Epstein is either dead or been shipped off somewhere, never to be heard from again, almost like a witness protection program, right? You go and live in some village outside Arkansas and you shut your face and you never do anything else. or you're going to be locked up for the rest of your life and you're going to be, the fall guy for all of us, right? Because it went a lot higher than Epstein. So really extraordinary for that to happen. This isn't some random person. This isn't some social media pundit. This is James Comey, and I find this really shocking.
Well, in some breaking news that's just happened just now, Speaker Mike Johnson has released, so it's come out 17 minutes ago. President Trump has already survived 2 assassination attempts. Now, former disgraced FBI Director James Comey is either threatening to kill Donald Trump or suggesting someone should. This is outrageous as it is dangerous. Grateful Secretary Noam and FBI Director Kash are looking into this. So now you have the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI Director, and the Speaker of the House onto this. This man will be in handcuffs very soon, and we're going to say it here on the Daily Australian. This could well be the first arrest, and if that then follows into Russiagate, then the intel that we've had on this show and on the 51st State and others is absolutely dead on accurate. That means that we are the news now, and we will be proud of this. Nicola, I think what we'll do is this little segment that we've done here with the other one, we will cut this and we'll put it out in a separate video to share over the weekend. It's that important that we see what's going on. It's absolutely extraordinary.
Yeah, we've all been stating for a long time that their backs are well and truly up against the wall. People have been screaming, the new Trump administration, when will he hold these people to account? And I often say, I say this in my personal life and my professional life, if you give people enough rope, eventually they'll hang themselves, if that's who they are. And that's what he's done there. And it's just so telling because his daughter's involved in the Diddy case. So, I said on a post the other day, I think it was a post on this show, that we are about to find out some truly horrible things about individuals that we were told to look up to, told to follow and respect, whether they be movie stars or rap stars or indeed politicians and public servants. We're about to learn horrible things about people you were told to respect, people in authority, and you're going to learn that they were not people you should respect and probably not people who should have been in authority. And that's why Trump fired him. This is absolutely huge. I mean, as you say, there's already been attempts on Trump's life. We could be looking at another JFK moment. I mean, it's terrifying.
Well, one thing's for sure is that he will be very heavily insulated. He carries Secret Service protection. I understand he used to carry private protection as well, which I can't imagine that he wouldn't. He has the best intelligence in the world. I understand that General Michael Flynn does work out of Mar-a-Lago, who was the head of intelligence, and that's what he was. He's a general of intelligence. So, look, anything is possible at this stage to what we're saying. But look, it's a very, very nervous moment for those of us that are watching on. But at the same time, if we do see something happening, it's going to be very dangerous, but we will feel an enormous sense of relief and validation. But we are probably getting ahead of ourselves at the moment. But at the same time, the stage is now set, is what I'm saying. And I think that we're covering this as responsibly, with a mature tone as we are. We are well ahead of the mainstream news on this. And thank you, everyone, for your support. But please, if you're this far into the video, just share it and say, look at what Jason and Nicola are doing here. You're not going to see better news today. I don't know if some of the other guys in the Australian independent media would be onto this. I know that me personally, my interest has been equally Australia and the United States, because I feel like with the United States leads the world, and that's where our interest comes. But Nicola, likewise, you're watching everything around the world and you have the same interests as me. And I don't think anyone's ahead of us right now.
My insiders in the United States have said for a few weeks now, and I've shared some of those comments with you, that the aim has been for this conservative administration in America under Trump and using these tariffs to try and cause an overflow of conservatism around the world to push up against this leftist movement, this sort of roll, this soft roll into communism, and to prevent some of the harms that are occurring. We're definitely in a financial war. We are in an information war, but people are actually getting harmed now as well. So they see him as a threat. Their backs are against the wall, and that's why they are even considering something this dramatic. Look, it's not something I want to live through. I don't want to live through that, because I think it would actually have a devastating effect globally. The knock-on effect from someone, whether you believe in Trump or you don't believe in Trump, for sure that he's pushing up against all the right people, the people that we don't want to see in power, the people that are of putting the strings behind the scenes like the Hillary Clintons of this world. And he's doing it in a really clever way. You know, these tariffs have been said, oh, it's not Australian, it's not fair. Australia have had tariffs on countries for years and no one ever talks about that. So it's a worrying development. At least we know about it. You know, as I said, give them enough rope and they'll hang themselves. They've announced themselves that this is their plan now. So Trump and the world can act accordingly. But isn't it terrible that someone that's trying to make things better, Jason, is now being threatened by someone who used to hold such a powerful position?
You know, you've just explained the story of my political interest in my life. This is exactly how I read it with JFK. I thought, how could they kill that man? And growing up as a kid at the age of 19, going along to see the movie JFK at the cinema, a 3-hour film, watched it 3 times. It was a game changer. I could not understand how it was obvious that this was an inside job, and that's what that Oliver Stone film did for me. It set the course for my life at that stage. What it did was it secured me, JFK, a Democrat, as a lefty, because I thought that's my hero politically. If I could ever be anything, I would want to be like that and serve my country the way that he spoke and did all those things, and led forward. And so that was what I believed at the time. I was a student of all of that in politics. I admire, would you believe, what Gough Whitlam achieved in terms of reforms without knowing what the other side of that story was. So this is the point, right, that you learn as you go. And as a young person, you do care for society and you do care for others and you want everyone to get a lift, including yourself. But when you realise that that system is actually broken and corrupt, you must change as you get older. You can't go along with it anymore. And so I never understood how the left wing could be filled with millionaires, for example, in politics. Why would you be so rich but then serve the poor people? Isn't that an oxymoron? It doesn't make sense to me.
Hypocrisy for sure.
Exactly. So, look, it's a journey for all of us, and we spend copious amounts of time, you know, talking about it, in it, acting in different roles, you know, running, you know, political campaigns, handing out for other people, all of these things. So we are boots on the ground activists, if you will, with very little to show in terms of the spoils or certainly the titles, all of those things. The real hard yards, grunt work that is required. And you know what? When you get involved and you actually do it, you don't do it thinking that it's a lot of work. You just do it because it's just what you need to do. And then when you look back after a period of time and you look at how much work you have done, you don't even regret the fact that, you know, you got blisters or your skin's worn out or any of that, those sort of, you know, descriptions. You just look at it as what you did. It was just part of your life at that time. So, I've realised just this week, and I've said it to a few people, that in April of this year was my 10-year anniversary at doing this 24/7. I flicked over 24/7 the moment Bernie Sanders announced his candidacy for president in April of 2015. That's 2 world wars in time doing this. And I look at it and I go, and I still get 20 views on YouTube. Like, are you serious? You know, it's just a funny thing to mention.
I don't think you are. I don't think you are. From the comments I see under the show, they can't hide everything. I think they hide likes and shares. But then there's a certain part of it where you can see views, and there's thousands and thousands of views. So you've got 6 likes and 5,500 views. It doesn't, you know. Don't forget, AI is a machine. She's a nasty bitch, and she is there, right? This is CCP tactics, right? This is why we're changing the format of the show. I won't go into it, but this is CCP tactics to make you believe that you're in an empty room talking to yourself. You're not relevant. You're not important. No one's listening to you. That's what that removal of, you know, visually the numbers does, so that you lose faith in yourself. And it does work. It's also the same reason they have all these either paid trolls or these bot trolls. And you can tell they're bot trolls because they can't spell properly. They can't even insult you properly. You think, God, at least employ a machine that knows how to insult properly, or with a British accent or something. And you can tell these insults have been generated in a country that is probably not English speaking. I always think that's very telling, Jason. So I know that we're getting out there. You know, I had a big meeting in Australia last night, and it's very important what we're doing. And it's not just us. It's lots of organizations around Australia are feeling the same thing. And like us, they feel the same way we do. Is it worth carrying on? Are we holding any value for anyone? Are we getting through to anyone? And I have moments where I think, do Australians want to be free? Do Australians want things to return the way they were at 2018-19? Do they want that? Or do they just want to be controlled? Do they just want their minimum basic income and to go to work and come home and watch TV and get up tomorrow and go to work and come home and watch TV and eat their processed food and, not be able to afford to go on holiday or a new car or anything like that? And things get worse and worse and worse. That's why you have that feeling things were better in the old days. Are they happy with that? Well, a portion of them are, Jason. It's become very obvious to me that a portion of them are. The whole movement not to vote. Yes, I understand that there's problems with the system, but you can't check out like that because that's what they want, because that's the same vehicle that the CCP tactics online do to make you lose such faith in your systems, in government, in elections, in the truth that you yourself give up. They've created a war that makes us give up on ourselves, and that's why we shouldn't.
Well said. And you know who also would say that in his book, The Art of the Deal, was Donald Trump himself. He said there were many moments that he just wanted to stay home and watch the game on TV, but felt like he had to go along to a particular event. And he said, so I'd get myself up and I'd get ready and I'd go down and I would meet people and inevitably I would make a deal or make an introduction that would lead to making a deal. So he said, momentum is the key. Absolutely. And when you stop and you prevent that momentum, that's the disservice. Look, the darkest hour is always before the dawn. And I think we are here. I've got more breaking news on this James Comey story, more developments. We're not yet at handcuffs, but we are very, very close.
Wow.
I'm wondering, Nicola, what about if we just go straight to the news now?
Yes.
And we'll get through it and we'll come out on the other side. So I'm going to start with some other stories. Then I'm going to get to this is the biggest story of the week, if not the year so far. I'm just scrolling on my page in front of you now, guys, and I'm going to deliver it for you right now. So this is the news for Friday, the 16th of May. New Liberal leader Susan Ley has been confronted with a series of brutal questions on national television on how long she's got in the top job as a fight brews over nuclear power. A diplomatic Susan Ley said she was proud to be the first female leader, but stressed there were bigger issues ahead. Now, more harrowing details have come to light at the Sean Diddy Combs trial in New York. The star witness and Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, claimed on Thursday US time that the rap mogul overdosed on opioids at the Playboy Mansion, but a series of texts from Miss Ventura to Combs could undermine her central claim that she eventually no longer wanted to participate in freak-off sex parties. Combs' defence has suggested that she actually instigated some of them. While the judge has lashed out at Combs' lawyers for their treatment of Miss Ventura, in what universe? He fumed. Combs is charged with transportation to engage in prostitution, sex trafficking and racketeering. He could face life in jail for just the racketeering charge. Combs has pled not guilty. Now, Ventura has began her second day of cross-examination by the lawyers. She claimed that the alleged overdose occurred during a night of hard partying in LA that included a freak-off, a drug-fueled sex session between her, Combs, and male sex workers, and a trip to a sex club. The singer claimed an overdose took place when he continued the party at the Playboy Mansion without her. At one point, Judge Aaron Subramanian chided Combs' defence team for taking too long to cross-examine the heavily pregnant Ventura after his lawyers said that their questioning could stretch into next week. She's already been in the witness box for 5 days straight. In what universe did you not understand that this was important, pointing out that Ventura's pregnancy, that she should be off the stand at the end of the week? Some are suggesting the Nationals want to lock in nuclear as part of that formal... Oh, sorry, I'm reading over a different story here. This is back on the Susan Ley. Sorry about that, guys. Now, I'm just getting breaking news following through. I'm just checking on this James Comey story. I'll come back to that in a moment. It's flashing up before my eyes. So here we go. This is the big story of the day. Former director James Comey, whose daughter Maurene Comey is prosecuting the Diddy trial, has posted an image 8647 implying murder President Trump. It has been shared by Donald Trump Jr. and others questioning whether this is incitement and deserves legal action. So here are the developments. Secretary Kristi Noem says that the DHS and Secret Service are now investigating the James Comey Instagram post from shortly ago and will respond appropriately. James Comey himself posted this message. I posted earlier a picture of some shells I saw today on a beach walk, which I assumed were a political message. I didn't realise some folks associate those numbers with violence. It never occurred to me, but I oppose violence of any kind, so I took them down. Meanwhile, left-wing influencer on X, Ed Krasenstein, has shared an image of 4 pool balls on a pool table with the numbers 8, 6, 4, and 7 in a row with a snooker cue or pool cue pointing at the balls. FBI Director Kash Patel confirms the Bureau is working closely with the Secret Service following a concerning tweet by former Director James Comey aimed at President Trump. Patel stated the Secret Service holds primary jurisdiction, but the FBI stands ready to provide full support. Dan Scavino has said Comey truly is a POS. While he'll claim not to know what 8647 means, there's no doubt that the former disgraced FBI director knows exactly what he's doing, with a plea to bad actors, terrorists, to assassinate the President of the United States while traveling internationally. Don't let him get away with it. Meanwhile, Peter Doocy on Fox calls out the absurdity of James Comey pretending not to know what 86 means, especially after 2 assassination attempts on President Trump in the past year. Doocy points out that even a quick Google search links 86 to mob slang for killing someone, adding Comey, a guy who's prosecuted mobsters, suddenly declares ignorance. The new FBI director is now coordinating with the Secret Service to question Comey directly. And as a reminder, last year on the 21st of January 2024, Alex Soros, the son of George Soros, put a post up on X that read, "Last year, the crime and inflation crises largely evaporated. So did the leading theories about what has caused them." And there is a picture of a bullet going through a piece of glass and a handful of money, implying another form of an assassination. Meanwhile, Dan Scavino, assistant to the president, has posted a photograph of Phil Collins from the film clip In the Air Tonight and written those words there, something happening in the air tonight. And so that's really interesting. Now, here's the breaking news that we didn't get to earlier. Tulsi Gabbard has just called for James Comey to be arrested, says he issued a hit on President Trump. He absolutely knew what 86 meant. James Comey should be held accountable and put behind bars for this, Gabbard said. She is the Director of National Intelligence. She is the United States' #1 intelligence officer, calling for James Comey to be behind bars.
So whatever James Comey intent, he and people like him need to be held to account according to the law, which is something that he claims to have given his life for and stands by the rule of law. Fantastic. The rule of law says people like him who issue direct threats against the President of the United States, essentially issuing a call to assassinate him, must be held accountable under the law.
Do you believe Comey should be in jail?
I do.
Meanwhile, Congressman Andy Ogles, a Republican from Tennessee, asked Secret Service Director Sean Curran, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Deputy Director Dan Bongino to investigate Comey for violating federal laws after posting 8647. Ogles cites 18 U.S.C. 871, threats against the president, and 18 U.S.C. 875, interstate communications containing threats. Given Comey's former leadership of the FBI, the stakes are even higher. His influence extends well beyond the general public. It is reasonable to assume that his online followers include current or former Bureau employees, individuals who may view his commentary as carrying an insider's weight or implicit direction. I also request that the Bureau confirm whether Comey currently retains any access to classified information or security clearances, and whether continued access is appropriate in light of this incident. 86 is commonly understood as slang for eliminate or kill, and 47 has become a popular shorthand reference to President Trump, the 47th President of the United States. When paired, the implication is unmistakable to many Americans, a coded suggestion to eliminate 47, that is, to assassinate the president. Now, Ezra Cohen, who worked as an administrator in the previous administration, has said, "Why does Jim Comey continue to behave this way? He believes he will face no consequences for his actions." And in a separate post, he's written, the two most narcissistic people I've ever met are Jim Comey and Mark Milley, truly pathological. Both have similar behaviours. They believe any act that they take is by definition just and moral, and that they are deputised by some supra-constitutional force. They are extremely dangerous. Massive story. We'll continue to get the news as it breaks live as we're recording the show today. Meanwhile, just in, the Wisconsin judge accused of helping an illegal immigrant evade arrest by ICE in her courtroom entered a not guilty plea Thursday in federal court Court. Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan was indicted by a grand jury Tuesday on federal charges of concealing a person from arrest and obstruction of justice during the alleged incident involving Eduardo Flores Ruiz last month. Around 200 protesters were demonstrating Thursday outside the courthouse in Milwaukee ahead of her court appearance. A trial date has been set for July 21. Now, in other interesting news, this is a separate story, but very interesting. A woman who teaches 10th grade high school in America has announced that she's leaving the profession in a video that's now gone viral. She says kids can no longer read proficiently, they won't pay attention, won't listen to authority. They don't think the Declaration of Independence is important. They're writing their papers with AI like ChatGPT. They don't know math. They don't care about history. Big story, Nicola. We could spend an hour on just on that one. And also, this is news that we saw yesterday, but I don't think we covered it enough in the show. But Iran says that they are ready for a nuclear deal with President Trump if sanctions are lifted. Top advisor to the Supreme Leader has told NBC News Iran would commit to never making nuclear weapons, getting rid of its stockpiles of highly enriched uranium, which can be weaponized, agree to only enrich uranium to the lower levels needed for civilian use, and allow international inspectors to supervise the process in exchange for the immediate lifting of all economic sanctions on Iran. Massive. So when you now consider that Mike Waltz was dumped from the Trump team because he was negotiating with Netanyahu for a strike on Iran, you now see the line in the sand. It is impossible now to think of Trump as a war maker. He's a peacemaker, and he's now got Netanyahu on the ropes. Always keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. Donald Trump is a peacemaker. We are seeing that in real time. He's declared this. He is trading war for a commercial trade environment. This is going to mean something different. This is going to go down a different pathway. I got very good advice yesterday saying, don't look at the Nasara Jassara thing the way that you're doing. That's a problem. This is the way through. And I understand I can talk about that more in detail. So in other breaking news that we've just seen come to hand, Ben & Jerry's co-founder, Ben Cohen, has been hauled out of an RFK Jr. Senate hearing. This was yesterday after disrupting it with protests over US support for Israel. Critics are calling him out, pointing to the irony of a junk food mogul clashing with RFK Jr., a champion of healthy eating. But the story goes further. Ben Cohen, along with Jerry from Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream, are both Jewish. They're both supporters of the state of Israel, but they are protesting in favour of Palestinians in Gaza. So for those that are following along, so now you see this idea that, all Jews are bad, which is inherently just a racist comment. This is not what's going on. The Jewish community is split between still being supporters of the state of Israel, but the heavy-handedness that they perceive of Netanyahu against Gazans, Palestinians. So it's a big deal. There's a lot of animosity, but there is a process here. And whilst it's imperfect, it's very clear now that Trump and Netanyahu are no longer eye to eye on this, almost as if Trump has allowed him to do what he was always going to do. And you're never going to stop Netanyahu. But at the same time, they've prevented a strike against Iran. This is a massive deal. So
it's like saying that all Australians agree with Anthony Albanese and the Labor government. It's not possible. And not all Chinese people agree with the CCP. And I can tell you, you'd be hard pushed to find a British person who agrees with Keir Starmer.
Exactly. Maybe the new Brits are different,
Maybe.
but then again, the realization later on that they're going to get stymied the same way and prevented. The thing is, like I've been saying for a little while now, Albanese, when he gave his victory speech at the when he won the election the other night, he said, "And as we always say, no one left behind." And that on the surface, it's a very noble comment. No one left behind. Okay, but what he doesn't say is, how do we get ahead? And that's the point. Great. So you're going to take the money off the billionaires to let the welfare class, the entitlement class, get more for themselves. But what about the working and the middle class that can't save $50,000 to borrow $950 to buy $1 million shoebox?
Well, it is a
makes no
wealth
sense.
transfer, and it's also a betrayal of Australians because He was in Indonesia. I think there's that funny clip of him coming down the stairs of the jet and he looks a little bit tipsy. It is quite funny. It's a Biden moment for Albo because he's not steady on his feet at all. And it's a nice soft red carpet, so there shouldn't be any problems. But he came down and he was saying things like, I want to thank the people of Indonesia and their support and their trade, and you're so wonderful. And that's all good. I have no problem with that. But you know what Albo never does? He never says thank you to Australians. He never says thank you for coming through that pandemic. Thank you for locking down. Thank you for rolling up your sleeve. Thank you for putting up with the inflation. Thank you so much for holding the line and, listening to your government. And thank you so much. He never thanks Australians. Not even after he's won the election, Jason, does Anthony Albanese take 5 seconds to thank Australians. It's despicable.
Very good point, isn't it? What kind of leader is that?
A treasonous one.
Because as you're saying it, I'm thinking about the various leaders over the time and their popularity. It's almost as if you're a Labor leader and you've got some charisma, you will always hold the benchmark for being a popular leader in this country because you generally support the average working person. But Liberal prime ministers don't necessarily get that same feeling, do they? I mean, there's a fondness for Menzies because he was in power for so long as the first person to create the new Liberal Party. John Howard was the second longest serving prime minister, and there was a sort of a fondness for Howard because he won 4 elections, had to have been. But he was also a very astute political operator, but he wasn't always. John Howard was a terrible treasurer. When John Howard was treasurer to Malcolm Fraser from the period 75 to 83, he oversaw a period of stagflation where inflation was more than 10%, unemployment was more than 10%. The top marginal rate of tax was 60 cents in the dollar that kicked in at $35,000 a year. So Howard was a terrible treasurer, and what it did was it set up the period that when Keating became the very young 35 or 36-year-old treasurer when he got into office, something 38 maybe, with Bob Hawke, he set about the reforming of the system, and so they set up immediately a wages accord. So the first thing they did was to set it up so that you got a CPI increase, and that was for 1 year, and then they went through 7 or 8 wages accords, and it transitioned into from away from the union toward collective bargaining, but trade-offs for pay rises for productivity increases, and that's been the role ever since.
Well, where's wage rises in line with inflation? That hasn't happened for 15 years in Australia.
Never.
So the inflation keeps going up. Our wages have stayed the same, if you're lucky enough to be getting any. And people can't afford to live. People can't afford to eat. There are people living in their cars. And you're flying to Indonesia within days to thank the people of Indonesia, for their business, their trade. I guess that's what he was saying. And Indonesian products are very popular in Australia. But didn't Australians just elect you? Where's your thanking to Australians? You thank your supporters. You say, I'm the prime minister of everyone, not just those who, those who voted for me. So when you say everyone, do you mean all Australians or do you mean globally? Right? Your trade partner. That seems to be what you're saying, because the first thing you did is you nicked off and took care of whatever trade deal you've got going on over there. I think it's pretty piss poor how Australians have been treated. They're not appreciated. They're not valued. It couldn't be more obvious that they're not valued. Do you know? Here's an interesting fact. I shared it on X and I think it was shadow banned because it's a bit of a touchy subject. I asked how many Aboriginal Indigenous people are currently living alive in Australia. It was a lot less than I thought. It was 900 odd thousand, right? And it made me a little bit sad. And I said, how many Indians now call Australia home? And it was not in the late 900 and something thousands. So, just with Indian migrants, and we've got Chinese and British and South African and American and all from other countries. But if you just take the Aboriginal population and the Indian population, they're equal. And with the migration that's happening, they're likely to surpass. And I'm just thinking, Jason, how long it will be before we'll have, welcome to Punjab ceremonies. Do you know what I mean? Because, we're celebrating Diwali. I mean, these populations are becoming absolutely huge, and they're about to outnumber what we see and know and are told is the Indigenous population. So strange things happening in Australia. Strange decisions are being made. And I know that they've just been brought here so that they can, financially rape them, essentially. They think they're coming here and everything's great. And, but I still think it's very strange when populations come from any country. I assume they've left. Let's take, for instance, the Chinese community, right? That they come and live here from China. It's a very hard thing to do. You have to get permission from the CCP to leave. You have to have an exemplary social credit score. Then you get to come and live in Australia. And essentially, until this period in history, you were quite free. And then we have closed door meetings with the Chinese communist community in Australia with Labor pre-election, because they want Australia to become more socialist. If you wanted to live in socialism and communism, why did you leave socialism and communism?
Exactly.
I don't understand.
Exactly.
Haven't you left to go somewhere different, somewhere better, to try something new, to economically enrich yourselves? I didn't come from the UK 30 years ago to UKify Australia, to insist everyone has a Sunday roast, watches Coronation Street in EastEnders, and all these Britishisms have to pop up. I don't need my flag everywhere, right? I don't necessarily care about flags, but we've got a lot of politicians. That Adam Bant that was kicked out of the Greens, he refused to stand in front of the Australian flag. Someone has video of him moving it to the side. What's going on? Don't you come to Australia because you love it? I loved Australian culture. That's why I came here. I love the cliches, the barbecues, the beach parties, What's wrong with us? Why come here if you don't like it the way it is?
It's extraordinary, isn't it? I mean, it's such a confusing scenario why you'd want to.
Because your family came from somewhere else. You've got Russian heritage.
Yep.
Mine's British, but also German. And it's like, you don't need to drag. It's a horrible, horrible version of like globalization, right? You want it the same as where you came from. Why did you leave then?
Yes, absolutely. Again, it was the same thing. Like my mum used to tell me stories when she was a kid that all she wanted to do was assimilate. So when her father would make her a sandwich, he would get a big thick piece of bread and he'd smear on some liverwurst pate. And she was so embarrassed that she would take it to the end of the street and she said, I'd throw it in the bushes and I'd starve all day. I just didn't want to do it. Like that was the difference. And of course, everyone anglicized their names back then as well. This was a common thing to do.
Everyone did. Even the Greeks did. My husband did the same thing. He was sent with amazing Greek lunches to school. Amazing. His mum's a phenomenal cook. Yeah. And when he got to school, he just wanted to be one of the Aussie kids. So he swapped his lunch. A few of the kids knew, God, his lunch is amazing. And they'd swap and he'd get a floppy ham sandwich or something. And he was like, I preferred that because it felt Aussie. I wanted to be Aussie, right?
Yes.
By the way, Americans can't say Aussie. I know that's totally offbeat today. Aussie. But Americans say Aussie.
Yes, yeah.
Oh my God, you're an Aussie. And I'm like,
that's right.
You say
but you know what? If we spelt it with a double Z, then they would, because every word for them like is using a Z replacing the S, like recognize is a Z, which is interesting in itself. Now, look, I've just flicked over to see the latest coming through on James Comey, and what I want to share is the headlines. I think this is really interesting. So it's now mainstream.
Good.
So now if it's mainstream, it makes sense that we're going to see some handcuffs. The Guardian, James Comey investigated over seashell photo claimed to be threat against Trump. Forbes, James Comey under investigation for post suggesting to get rid of president. The Australian, former FBI chief probed for Trump assassination call. News, former FBI director under investigation. And this strange news, I don't know who they are, Eerie News, is that Irish? Eerie News Now.
Era.
Former FBI Director James Comey takes down Instagram post after conservative uproar.
Oh, don't you spin that. That is outrageous propaganda.
Exactly. I think that is a very telling thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to screenshot that will go into another post here, but just to give you an idea of how the propaganda machine works. But here's my point. if we're ahead of the news cycle, which we are, and we've been calling what would be the first arrest for some time, these buffheads in the mainstream media have got no idea what's going on. So they are now forced to operate in the real time. So they operate in this microcosm. So they operate in the world that experimental medication is safe and effective because Greg Hunt told them so. We operate in a world that we read studies and understand what's going on and can discern that is a lie. It's been proven a million times.
Yeah.
So we operate outside of that. So now what we're doing is those of us that have operated outside of it have arrived at a critical mass at a story that is bringing the independent news to the mainstream news. So it's our job to be able to point out and also to perhaps see what's coming along this pathway and predict what's coming. Because if James Comey ends up in handcuffs and is wanted for questioning, they're then going to have to work out why would this be the case. Now, he's going to deny everything. So to build a case against him is a big deal. But according to those statutes that Andy Ogle pointed out, I mean, you don't have to prove everything. It's not like they're going to go in there and say, well, James Comey, tell us what you're going to do.
Intent.
Related back to Russia.
It's about intent, and it's there. And motive. Well, he was fired by Trump, right? Even if you don't take on the fact that he works for the deep state and has those kind of connections. Motive, he was fired by Trump. Intent, even, 86ing someone, which is a threat to get rid of them, to murder them, to assassinate them, was commonplace on shows like The Sopranos. But even in Australia, if someone wrote that about a prime minister or any politician, it would also be considered a threat, covertly, but a threat. Now, if this guy is the former FBI director, he knows all about covert threats.
Absolutely. He was the head of the FBI. It
dog whistle. That was a dog whistle. Last resort. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, if you have the Director of National Intelligence, a former Democrat who was going to be the VP to Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, calling him out to go to jail for what he's just done, you are now in the hot seat. This is massive.
Well, I want to call him out to go to jail as well, because what that does is that also removes democracy. You're removing the will of the people. The people want to be led by this person because he's a nationalist and not a globalist. And you have no right to 86 him because it's inconvenient for you and your pervert globalist deep state friends who are about to be exposed because they couldn't control themselves because they think they have jurisdiction over anyone, including children. And here's the news. You don't.
Yes. Now, during the period 16-17, when everyone was sort of researching on the chance. So the idea was, as someone described to me, you put a pinprick into intel and you go digging down and you dig. And some of the things that came out were suggesting that Comey and others within the FBI were communicating so that they were communicating outside of circles where they could be tracked. And they were using the PlayStation where they could log in and they could leave messages for each other.
Kids do that, yeah.
And another trick that they were doing was that they were writing emails but in the drafts, so they weren't getting sent. And so they would have a common password to get into the same email account to go to the drafts to read the emails. This is what
we need to use some of these tactics because they're telling us what's safe, right? They're telling us.
Well, this is true, but at the same time that we've worked them out. Now, Nicola, you told me a story earlier, a very disturbing story about framing people here in Australia by using identifications such as number plates. This is another one of these stories. And what's inadvertently happened in this story is that the criminals have revealed their how they operate. So when you say, like, you're talking about the cloning of the number plate story?
Mm-hmm. You want me to explain that?
Please tell the story. It's an incredible story for those that haven't heard it. It blew me away when you told me. I wasn't aware of it.
So yesterday I was joking because I had my neck thing on because I put my neck out and I was trying to think of the word and I said drone. The word I meant was clone. It's not a clone of me. It's the real Nicola Charles. I'm just a bit stiff, still a bit stiff today. So this word clone, we've heard of this a lot in the UK. It started in the 90s with Dolly the sheep. We're cloning the sheep. There's people who have suspicions that they've cloned humans. Why wouldn't they be able to clone a human, by the way, if they can clone a sheep? I think, if you can do it, you can do it. And some really dodgy things are going on globally, biologically. But I'd never heard before of cloning number plates, and not in such a nefarious manner. So here's what's gone on in Australia in the last 48 hours. And there was a police press conference on this. So some criminals who seem to be anti-Semitic, but they could be anything, they could be anti-government, they could be anything. They're just criminals. Criminals are criminals, right? So they got hold of, I believe it was a Volkswagen Golf, and they cloned a plate. So they cleverly found another Volkswagen Golf that had a real plate that looked similar, cloned it, had a plate made, you can do that, stuck it on the car, and then committed crimes. There were small crimes. Well, it's not small these days with the cost of fuel, driving off after filling up the car at filling stations. But in the police press conference, they said that the car was filmed and the occupants setting fires at a synagogue. So what the police did then is they went to arrest the people who owned a Volkswagen Golf of this registration number. And from the story I saw, and I saw it from RV, was that the people they went to arrest that owned the original Golf were themselves Jewish. And they had quite the ruckus with the cops, because why would they set fire to their own synagogue? So it almost like the plate had been cloned deliberately from possibly a Jewish person, but it was cloned all the same. This can happen to any of us. I've got quite a weird car, so they'd be hard pushed to find one. But anyone who drives a regular car, if criminals have the same car, they clone your plate, and you're going to get a knock at the door one day, and you're going to be quite forcibly arrested. The police in Australia don't muck around, and some of them haven't taken the correct oath, so that's a very scary situation. And then you're dragged off, and you know what happens in Australia recently? It's not a case of innocent until proven guilty. It's guilty until proven innocent. So there was this Jewish fellow, and he was very Jewish looking, to the point where Avi was saying to him, "How did they not know you were Jewish?" And the guy's going, "I don't know." He's got the hair and everything. But yeah, so very sneaky. Basically, the crime wave and the criminality that's going on in Australia is huge. And the only thing that's changed since our crime stats have gone through the roof on sexual assault, rape, particularly home invasion. There's a lot of home invasion. I had a friend who had a home invasion, and his 16-year-old autistic son was home alone at the time, and he got very emotionally disturbed. They threatened him with knives. They stole his computer, which was his life. I mean, horrible things. They just come over the fence and come into your house. The crime wave has gone up at the same time as the migration figures have gone up. And these people, they're professional criminals. They know how to commit crime. And cloning your plate is one of the ways. So if you ever get pulled over and you think, God, what's this about? It might not be about you, but they might think it is, Jason. So a bit scary.
It's frightening. So two things that so now we know how they operate by a cloning of a number plate. So now that you know how it works, that's going to help you in your favor. An interesting one, and it's just a joke from Jackie Mason, the famous New York Jewish comedian. He used to tell the story about, he said, every Jewish person would want to drive a Mercedes-Benz, but every Jewish person that can't afford a Mercedes-Benz has the perfect excuse why they don't. They say, "You think I'd buy a German car?" So I can't understand how these guys were driving Volkswagen Golfs. That was the
I know. That is a bit of a weird thing. I noticed that as well.
But Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel, signed an exclusive deal with German pharmaceutical company Pfizer to inject his population with that. So work that one out as well. That's kind of weird, isn't it? Now, I don't know if that's racist, not racist, whatever. It's just an observation. Now, Nicola, as we get towards the end of the show, there's a couple of things I want to mention that a little bit, well, one's heavy, one's light, but very interesting. Two films, in fact. So one of them that you brought my attention to was called Follow the Silenced. This is the new film by Mickey Willis, the man who created the Plandemic series. So there's a new trailer that's out, and I believe it's coming out this weekend. The trailer's about 5.5 minutes long. So what I've done is I've cut it down to give you a snippet of that for you now, and I'd just like to play about 2.5 minutes of it for you to get an idea. Very important film if you're able to catch it. It's called Follow the Silenced. Here it is.
Maddie?
The first question was, why isn't the United States looking in our own backyard for our data?
Madeline, hey honey, it's Daddy.
But they were. They just weren't telling us what it said.
Maddie? 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 Hey, welcome back.
I need to take this out. Help. I need this out. I can't do it.
Most of you have never heard of me.
I did my part. I got it.
And most likely have never heard of most of us here.
I'm scared and sad and hurting too. I am you, and I just want someone to help me too. Thank you, guys.
I would like to introduce, I'm proud to introduce, Miss Brianne Dressen.
I don't know where to go. Her cause of death, her actual cause of death is not on this thing.
Thanks for returning my call.
And I did not want to be the one to give my mother.
And I'm still burning.
Stomach issues. Everything started hurting.
Every single day.
The worst part was I could not walk. I couldn't move my arms or legs. I couldn't walk. I couldn't move. Shaking. I couldn't think about moving my legs.
I can't feel my legs. I can't feel anything.
They're not calling the FDA, they're calling us.
I don't want to die. Like, I want to still live for my kids.
Blood clot in his internal jugular vein.
Next week is his birthday. You know what I'm going to celebrate his birthday at?
Why it is the responsibility of sick people to do this is beyond me. I participated in the clinical trial for AstraZeneca.
She participated in the Pfizer COVID vaccine trial.
They dropped me from the trial.
35 adverse events. Reduced to functional abdominal pain. It's a stomach ache. I wonder what else was hidden.
The truth is not out there. And it's thanks to these guys. They've done everything they can to hide people, to hide injustices, and to even literally hide the cries of those people that are suffering.
If we try to talk about it on social media, you get banned. People don't know we even exist.
Denise Hertz is on an email string with the heads of the NIH.
These are safe and effective products.
I'm not going to give up. And I'm not going to give up on these people.
Doesn't matter how many times you see something like that, Nicola, it just stirs up the emotions, and you realise at what point will the general public react? Yeah. It's like when we saw The Sound of Freedom. At what point will they react? And there's just head in the sand.
That gentleman that lost his 16-year-old son that features in that film, and he lost his wife, so it was just him and his son going through this journey of life. Oh, God, I've never felt so much pain. I've had friends that have lost children, so I've been in that situation before, but devastating. And I believe her name's Maddie DeGarry, the girl that's been through hell and back, and they said that she had a stomach ache. And she's like in a wheelchair and has to have feeding tubes and can't eat. And I think that's a little bit more than a stomach ache. People put a lot of work into this stuff. It's like us with the show, you know, people have put a lot of time and effort into this. And actually, later today or tomorrow, I'm actually going to be interviewing on my podcast a vaccine injured person from Australia. And the videos that were sent to me were so heartbreaking. I thought they couldn't be real. So I'm going to interview him and find out about that. But yeah, if you can support that movie, if I see that movie on Follow the Silenced at any movie theatre in Australia, or if you need to pay, like going to a movie theatre online, probably be on Rumble and BitChute and stuff like that, because they probably wouldn't allow it on YouTube. And they're asking for $24.99 or $9.99 or $4.99 to watch it, pay it, because a lot of people put a lot of effort into that.
Yeah, well said. Well, the other big movie that's just been announced, Mel Gibson has announced that in about a month's time, filming will commence on the sequel. It will be called The Resurrection of the Christ, starring Jim Caviezel. So that's massive, and it couldn't come at a better time with a world totally upside down, and it will be one thing to unite the Christians around the world to see this film. That's a big deal. And Mel Gibson's been talking about that for a very, very long time, and I find it ironic.
Very unwoke of him, Jason.
That's right, but I find it interesting. Yesterday, I just happened to mention the name Mel Gibson, popped into my head. If there's a bucket list of people that I'd like to interview, Mel Gibson's probably in the top 5, I'd say.
Yeah, me too. I'd like to interview someone who's crazier than me. That'd be good.
Of course, that's how it is. Now, the other thing that I've decided to do, Nicola, on my X page is that every day or so I'm going to re-release some of the interviews that I did in my days at TNT. Yesterday, I posted the Dr. Gavin Ashenden interview, which is probably my favourite. But I went through the list in the hard drive, and there was dozens, if not hundreds, of interviews with great doctors. I found my interviews with Dr. Robert Malone, Dr. Jessica Rose, Dr. Jackie Stone, Dr. Herman Edeling from South Africa. There's literally dozens of them. Dr. Matt Shelton. And I thought it was interesting, and it was suggested to me just to chronicle over a historical period about what they were saying at the time. So this is what we did, part of the work. So
you should collate all those into, bits from each one. That would be really interesting.
Oh, look, it certainly would, and it's just a case of just, hours watching them back and remembering, because there was a lot of incredible things. I remember the interview with Jessica Rose was extraordinary. We did it on a Sunday afternoon. I think she wasn't where she normally lives. It might have been in Saudi Arabia or something like that. And just thinking that we were doing those things back in those days, like, I was doing 8 interviews on the weekend, an hour each, 4 per day, and just back to back, lining people up from all parts of the world, and just incredible moments. So I think that's certainly worthwhile. So please check them out on the X page. Mine is Jason Q Citizen 1. And Nicola, yours is All Bite No Bark 88, right?
Yes. All Bite
Good,
No
I got
Bark
it right.
88.
It took me a year.
So this is the last show. Let's hope this is the last show in an ugly format. Let's hope we look more beautiful in the new format. We might look worse though. We don't know yet, do we?
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it works. But the idea is just to sort of modernize the feed for you, make it a bit more looking like commercial telly, and a bit more. And at the same time, it will be a little bit less work in the background to get it out, which means you guys get the news earlier in the day. Because the perfect scenario is that we would have something out for you for morning TV time, but it's not always practical to be able to do that. And if we'd done that today, we would have missed out on half this Comey news.
Yes, exactly. But also, it's very interesting to note that I would imagine eventually the ideal is to have this public conversation that isn't really had anywhere else on a digital television channel. I mean, I think that's, an option that's being discussed with our people. But it's interesting because the BBC announced today that they are in the 2030s at some point. I would imagine it would be on the nail 2030. They're getting rid of terrestrial television. Bye beep. I mean, that's... I worked for the BBC on Neighbours. I grew up watching the BBC, all of the BBC shows for children, hand puppets, finger bobs and all that stuff. And I just can't believe that the BBC is disappearing. And they've announced, I think his name's Tim Davie, the CEO, and he's saying basically they're just going pure digital. So I remember a few years ago when shows were pushed onto digital channels, it was considered to be because they were rubbish and they didn't have a big audience anymore. And now everything's going digital. And I think the end game is they want people to watch television on their phones, on their iPads. I know my kids do anyway already. And so that's very strange, and it's like this. I mean, I don't believe it for a second, but it's like this thing where they say we can't go back to the moon because it's a lost technology. I wonder if we're going to get to a point where we can't have terrestrial TV anymore because it's a lost technology. Please, guys, hang on to that technology, because when this digital world finally implodes, and I believe it will, if they can clone your rego plate, which I know is reasonably easy, but they can clone a sheep, and we suspect they're cloning people, don't think they can't clone your digital identity. We already know they clone credit cards. Somebody cloned one of my credit cards when I was on TV and I had lots of money. It was a gold Amex. I was very proud of it. I didn't ask for it. It was just sent to me. And somebody stole on a trip to the UK 26,000 UK pounds. That was a lot in Aussie dollars. Because they, at the check-in at a hotel, they went clunk click with that plastic thing, took it and cloned my card and just had a big spending spree. So, this digital space is going to implode because they are going to clone your digital ID, which is your iris scan, your thumbprint, your fingerprint, your facial recognition. You can't change those. I've said before, we're not Tom Cruise in Minority Report. There won't be a popping out of an eyeball and a new one going in. Unless there becomes some cover you can wear on a pair of glasses, Jason. I'll tell you what's hilarious. There's a university in America. I wish I could remember the name and compliment them on it. They've created the most hideous looking jumper. The base of the jumper, the sweater, is white, and on the front is basically like a street view. There's a house and a road and a tree and whatever. And they've got the facial recognition, the recognition camera going in the university. And there's a guy sat down with his back to the camera, and the machine is going human, sitting down. And there's a guy walking around, and he's a skinny guy, and they're going human, and the square is around them. That's how it identifies you as you move, and they're all moving around. And it can see the guy, and his shirt's off, and it's a human, and there's a box around him, and he pulls on this jumper that looks like a street view, and the box goes poof. Because he's a street view now. He's not a human. So I'm telling you, we're going to end up in some weird perversion of Mao's China, where we're all going to be wearing like these gray overalls that have street views on them as we try desperately to look like a tree or a road and as unhuman as possible. I don't want to live in this world, Jason. This is bullshit.
It is bullshit. Where are we headed? Wow. Well, what a weekend we've got for you. We've got obviously the film is one to see, Follow the Silence.
Yes.
It looks like it's a very wet weekend here in New South Wales, so the sports may be called off. So maybe there's an opportunity to do a little bit of reading, do a little bit of viewing, do something nice for yourself. Live your best life is the motto, and at the same time realize that we're all here making a contribution to build the world that we want for ourselves, for our children, and what will always be the better world, not the one that we're being driven into. So will this be the weekend that we see that first arrest? We are all watching with bated breath. And of course, it's still just Thursday in the US, so there is another day before the weekend. James Comey will be one very nervous man in the United States. Let's hope something happens.
And when you like and share or subscribe, whatever you do with independent media, and when you pay to watch this movie and support the people who made it, particularly those who are vaccine injured, you're also speaking for those people who no longer have a voice, because, of course, the ultimate vaccine injury is death, and there's been plenty of that. So it's a way for you to contribute and also get something back, which is knowledge. And believe me, in this world, knowledge is power. Thank you so much for watching again The Daily Australian with myself, Nicola Charles, and my co-host and co-producer, Jason Olbourne. We will do this all over again on Monday, and I'm hoping, cross your fingers, we look about 10 years younger. Have a great weekend. See you then.
My name is Nicola Charles, and I'm a proud anti-vaxxer from Victoria, Australia. Now, I've been worried about vaccines for a long time, but it's not just those clear substances in vials that get injected into people's arms that I'm concerned about. It's vaccines being dropped from the sky as aerosols, and vaccines that are added to liquids that we can drink. In 2013, the Australian government administered 1,000 cholera vaccines to recipients in a drink. Who is delivering your water every day, and what is the quality of that water? They've already told us that it contains fluoride, a neurotoxin. 3 years ago, I stopped drinking tap water and recently went onto the Zeta Potential program. This adds alkalinity to the blood and also increases your electrolytes. Something is giving people mass cancers around the world, and jumping onto Zeta Potential for me has been one way for me to alleviate my fears. If you want to jump on the knowledge train with regard to water, click on the link below this show. My name is Nicola Charles, and I'm a proud anti-vaxxer from Victoria, Australia. Now, I've been worried about vaccines for a long time, but it's not just those clear substances in vials that get injected into people's arms that I'm concerned about. It's vaccines being dropped from the sky as aerosols, and vaccines that are added to liquids that we can drink. In 2013, the Australian government administered 1,000 cholera vaccines to recipients in a drink. Who is delivering your water every day, and what is the quality of that water? They've already told us that it contains fluoride, a neurotoxin. 3 years ago, I stopped drinking tap water and recently went onto the Zeta Potential program. This adds alkalinity to the blood and also increases your electrolytes. Something is giving people mass cancers around the world, and jumping onto Zeta Potential for me has been one way for me to alleviate my fears. If you want to jump on the knowledge train with regard to water, click on the link below this show.